Hey folks, you're about to watch the second part of a two-part interview with Victoria Manning, senior investigative researcher for Restoration News. This time, we're diving into Virginia politics, the truth about Abigail Spanberger, the fake moderate, and more. I'm Hayden Ludwig, and this is Restoration Spotlight. So I want to change gears and talk about yet another pillar we're involved in, illegalaliencrimes.com. So start by telling us what illegal alien crimes is and what we're trying to do with it that's different from mainstream media reporting.
The website is really trying to show everyday Americans what is going on in their backyard. We have a map that you can select your state and even your locality to find out what crimes have been committed by illegal aliens who've crossed our border under the Biden-Harris regime and the types of crimes that they've been committing. You know, Tom Homan recently said that we deported over 700,000 illegal aliens last year. And 70% of them had committed additional crimes other than just crossing the border illegally.
Wow.
Those criminals are impacting everyone across America, not just in big cities, but small towns also. And that's what we're trying to expose to Americans, the danger that it puts citizens in across America. We've seen murders, we've seen child rapes. I remember a monster that I profiled out in California. He had what they deemed the rape dungeon on wheels.
Oh my goodness.
He had a van where he would abduct women, take them into the mountains of California, and rape them and murder them.
Wow.
Those are the types of people that have crossed our border illegally.
700,000. That's not Mexican grandmas. That's violent murderers who often come from cartels and gangs.
Absolutely. Human trafficking. We're seeing so many children being trafficked and then getting here and being victims of child sexual assault. There are so many pedophiles that we've highlighted on illegalaliencrimes.com. And it's everywhere, and they're being protected by sanctuary cities.
What is a sanctuary city?
A sanctuary city, they are essentially these city councils and boards of supervisors and leftist sheriffs who are protecting the criminals. So when a criminal is arrested by the police, they're deemed to be a non-citizen, the police are supposed to notify ICE that they're here illegally. And then ICE will come and pick them up once they've been released and deport them. Sanctuary cities are prohibiting these law enforcement officers from communicating with federal law enforcement. And therefore, what we're seeing like in states like Minnesota and Minneapolis, ICE is having to go in and hunt down these monsters in the communities rather than taking them over safely directly from the jails.
So in other words, Minnesota is a great example. If Minneapolis was arresting these people and communicating with ICE, which they're not because of the sanctuary law or jurisdiction or ordinance that was passed, then you wouldn't have to have ICE raiding door to door in these places. You'd have an easy, smooth transfer of one criminal into their hands, which is what they're trying to do anyway.
Exactly, and that's been the practice of ICE, even under Obama. That was the practice. The jails communicated with ICE. ICE came and picked up the criminals and deported them. Now, these sanctuary cities are claiming they need these special judicial warrants to hand over the criminals to ICE. One of the, in my own home state now that Governor Spanberger has taken over, her first executive order that she made when she took office was rescinding Governor Youngkin's order that law enforcement must cooperate with ICE.
And under the Youngkin administration, we deported thousands of these violent illegal aliens. These are just regular people. These are people committing really evil crimes.
Yeah, and you saw our crime rate go down as well as our fentanyl crisis. Attorney General Jason Miyares was so strong on this issue in trying to get rid of these criminal illegal aliens that were causing so many deaths in our state with the fentanyl crisis. And, Attorney General Miyares comes from an immigrant family. His mother came here legally from Cuba. And it's not that we're opposed to immigration. We love immigrants who want to come here legally.
Sure. Yeah, exactly right. What's striking to me, too, is you go back to the 1990s, there were no sanctuary cities. They began in ones and twos in sporadic places. I think Portland, Oregon was one of the first ones. No surprise there. We're now dealing with hundreds across the country. It's a huge number of these. It's virtually every large blue city in America, a medium and large city in America now, and many counties too, even in red states.
Yeah, we've gotten away from the melting pot of America. Come here, assimilate, let's just all be Americans. Now we have these divisive policies where everybody has to be labeled as a hyphenated American.
Yes.
Hispanic American, Mexican American, African American.
Illegal alien American.
Illegal alien American. And we're seeing these far left groups funding these protests with these immigration protests that we're seeing across the nation. These people are being paid to show up to protest. They want to maintain control. Clearly, the Biden administration had these open borders policies because they saw them as future voters that could help them take back or maintain control.
Yes. One of my concerns is you mentioned 700,000 illegal aliens deported last year. Love it. Wish it was 7 million, of course, because we're looking at potentially a population of maybe 40 to 50 million illegal aliens, some of whom have been here for decades, but maybe half of whom entered under the Biden administration. Nobody really knows the real number. And part of what's so sinister about letting in 20 million plus people in across the border in 4 years under Biden is now we can spend just 4 years under the Trump administration just getting rid of the absolute worst ones and never make a real dent in the illegal alien population, right? So this is one of the big, really evil things that they've done, because the longer those people stay here, and we're talking about people who just come and get a job, they're not trying to kill anybody, right? They just want to live here. That's tens of millions of people. The longer they're here, the harder it becomes to justify to the American people removing your neighbor who's been here for 10 years now. They know that, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But their talking point right now is that Homeland Security is just going after anyone who looks Hispanic.
Right.
And
sure. Yeah.
They still have plenty of criminals to go after, hardened criminals that they are targeting and prioritizing. And Tom Homan has been very clear about that. And while I think that we need to address everyone here that's illegal, they are prioritizing the most violent. And ultimately, we're going to probably need more than 4 more years to make all of this happen.
One of the things you've done in the last few months as of recording here is address some of the common misconceptions around sanctuary cities and kind of this issue in general. So let me ask you one specifically, and I'd like to hear more of these, but is crossing the border without the consent and knowledge of the United States government a civil penalty?
So it is a crime to cross our border illegally. The code that addresses this also allows the Department of Homeland Security to process it as a civil penalty, but it is actually a crime to cross the border. They process it as a civil penalty because they don't have to go through the criminal courts to do so.
I see.
So, but the misconception and the leftist talking point is that it is a civil matter. It is not a crime to cross the border. That is just flat wrong.
So that would probably apply to more to people who overstay a visa, like a student visa.
Right. If you overstay a visa currently, that is a civil matter. However, there is legislation in Congress right now to change that to a criminal offense.
What other leftist talking points have you debunked on all of this?
So one of the points that bothers me most, I think, is that ICE agents are wearing masks because they're just evil people trying to hide their identity.
Because that's what evil people do. They wear masks.
Yeah. But in reality, these heroes are being targeted by criminal cartels, them and their families. There are bounties on their heads. There are bounties if you can just provide a photograph of an ICE agent and get it to the cartels, they'll give you $5,000.
Wow.
So these agents, I'm sure they don't like wearing these masks. I'm sure it inhibits their ability to conduct their jobs efficiently and effectively. But this is about their safety and the safety of their families.
So I want to pivot out of this and talk about Abigail Spanberger. Reason being, all of these issues, military, degradation and restoration, right? Illegal alien crimes, the issue of perverting our education system. These are big issues in a lot of places. There are massive issues in the state of Virginia. We've seen governors' races turn on some of these issues. So let's talk about, in this final segment here, about Abigail Spanberger, the supposed moderate. Let me give you some stats about her background. This is a CIA deep state hack who is now currently our governor, obviously a Democrat. At the same time, thousands of violent illegal aliens from Trinidad and Venezuela and the Mexican drug cartels have crossed into Virginia who have not been deported by the Trump administration. We have the Pentagon located in Arlington. That's the headquarters of all the services, right?
Mhm.
In Norfolk, near where you live, right? I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but in Norfolk, Virginia, you have the largest naval base in the world. Let's start with the big question of where does Virginia stand in 2026 now that the Democrats have taken charge and have defined priorities with all of these major issues?
You know, I really don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years, but the legislation that's being pushed through right now is quite scary. They're taking away the gun rights of Virginians. I anticipate that a lot of this legislation is going to be tangled up in the courts for a long time because I believe it's unconstitutional. Abigail Spanberger ran as a so-called moderate, but she already is not governing that way. She ran on affordability and claimed to support repealing the massive car tax in our state. Yet all of the legislation to repeal that car tax has been killed by her Democrat Party, and she is not pushed for that legislation. She's advocating for increased taxes on Virginians, and we're already taxed way too much.
Yes. With the budget surplus, by the way.
Yeah, we had a $2 billion budget surplus last year, at least $2 billion, may have actually been more than that, that Governor Youngkin advocated giving back to Virginians, and the Republican legislature wanted to give back to Virginians. That was the answer to the car tax repeal right there. We had a budget surplus. We could have repealed the car tax easily, and they didn't.
So people outside Virginia won't see this as the huge issue it is. It is the number one economic issue unique to Virginia. Talk about the car tax, because my understanding is there actually was a plan a few decades ago to get rid of this. I also want to observe that the Youngkin, Winsome Sears administration a couple of years ago had a plan to get out of the car tax in their budget that was nixed by Democrats who control the state legislature. So give us the background here of why is this a huge issue and why has it not been resolved yet?
So the car tax in Virginia, we pay a car tax when we purchase our car. We pay a tax on the sale of the car. But annually, we're also assessed the value of the car, and we have to pay a percentage tax just to own the car. Sometimes,
What, $10?
no, it's thousands of dollars. $5,000, I believe,
Lord.
is what I paid last year in my car tax on 3 vehicles. And Governor Gilmore, when he was in office years ago, had a plan to phase out the car tax over several years. Well, during that period of time, the Democrats gained control and they stopped that repeal midway. So we only got rid of about 50% of it. And you're right, Governor Youngkin had a plan to get rid of it when he was in office, but he did not have the control in the state legislature. The Democrats still had a control. So they prevented that from taking place.
I think this is one of those lopsided issues you could find. It's like a 95-5 against the car tax. So, given that we have a massive budget surplus, and we've had that for at least 6 or 7 years now, why on earth would Spanberger Democrats be against repealing it?
Well, if you look at her actual affordability plan on her website, that plan was going to cost a lot of money and they needed taxes to fund it. When you're looking at subsidized housing, that was her affordability plan. You had to have taxpayer dollars to help fund that. So they couldn't get rid of that slush fund because they had to use it for their so-called affordable housing projects.
That's unbelievable. I seem to recall that Governor Youngkin vetoed 54 gun control bills, in his time over his 4 years. 54 gun control bills.
Mm-hmm.
Many of those have already been pre-filed or introduced into the legislature as we speak here in 2026. Why the emphasis on gun control? Does Spanberger have a background related to this?
So I think it's outside entities like Moms Demand Action that I mentioned before that are so influential in Virginia politics. If you look at how much money they donate to these legislators, I truly believe it is just them bowing to their special interest groups. Because I think that if one thing can flip Virginia back to Republican control, it's this issue. We have a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who firmly support Second Amendment rights. And some of these radical bills that are getting through the legislature, we'll see if Spanberger actually signs them or not, but it will restrict the constitutional rights of Virginians to purchase weapons. Right now, one bill that has passed the legislature is banning so-called assault rifles. So magazines of over 15 bullet capacities will be outlawed in our state if the governor signs that bill.
Speaking of killing people with guns, let's talk about Jay Jones, our current attorney general. Yeah, as you know, and probably everybody watching, he had text messages that were revealed late in the 2025 race for attorney general against our former Republican attorney general, Jason Miyares, talking about how he wanted to put 2 bullets into his political opponent and his family, I believe, too.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you broke a huge story related to Jay Jones in October. Tell us about that and give us more of the context of his scandal.
Yeah, so Jones was arrested going 116 miles per hour in a 70 mile per hour zone on the interstate, and he was cited for reckless driving. Now, reckless driving in Virginia is a serious matter. Many people serve jail time for that offense. But Jay Jones had a plea agreement that we don't know exactly what it said, but we know the documents that we received under the Freedom of Information Act revealed that he submitted 1,000 hours of community service with 2 organizations. One of the organizations was his own political action committee.
Oh, no.
The other organization was the NAACP, for which he was collecting a salary from.
That famously nonpartisan, apolitical organization.
Yeah, exactly. So he claimed that he served 1,000 hours of volunteer time that he presented to the court advocating for relief for this reckless driving ticket. Well, I did the math. And that year of time that he supposedly served 100 hours, it would have been virtually impossible. Maybe if he didn't sleep more than 2 hours a night, he would have been able to serve those 1,000 hours. And we exposed this at Restoration News, and there was a special investigation on the matter. Unfortunately, that did not lead to a conviction of Jones, but I think everyone knows truly who he is.
Yes.
The problem with that situation is Virginia has 45 days of early voting. So when all of this broke about his text messages, reckless driving ticket, 1 million people had already voted.
Unbelievable. Out of a population of 9 million, by the way. Yes.
I received reports of people contacting voter registrar's office asking if they could change their votes for Jay Jones. But obviously it was too late.
And this is now our attorney general, the man responsible for prosecuting the law in state. Unbelievable. So we are, about 8 months out now from Election Day, 2026. Obviously, huge midterm coming up here. Mm-hmm. One of the contentious elections is going to be for Virginia Senator. Mark Warner, the Democrat, is running for re-election. Tell us a little bit about that. And I know we're early here, but kind of the lay of the land as you see it, as somebody who's been involved in Virginia politics for quite a while.
Well, as we saw with the Tim Kaine seat, it's really hard to unseat a Senate Democrat in Virginia. We don't know yet who. We have several people who are looking to run in the Republican primary. We don't know yet who those will be exactly. But Mark Warner has said over and over again that he would not be a career politician. He's in at least his 4th term now.
Yeah, these are Senate seats too. These are 6-year terms.
These are 6-year terms.
Yes.
And so he is an entrenched Democrat that just doesn't want to give up power.
And you notice, I'm not originally from Virginia, I live there now, but you notice how both parties, I think way more the Democrats than the Republicans, but both parties are so deeply involved by the Beltway in a way that's very different from any other state. Maybe that's true in Maryland too, but Maryland is such a blue state, it becomes irrelevant. But you notice how much influence Washington and the establishment in Washington has on Virginia politics. It's actually very striking to me. And I wonder how much influence this has over, the tone and tenor of Virginia elections, because it truly is a purple state. It might lean a little blue because of immigration, but there are enough potential Republican votes there for it to go red. It did for Glenn Youngkin in 2021 here. So as you look at this, do you feel confident about the future of Virginia? Not in the next year or two, but over the next, say, 10. Can we take it back?
We can take it back, but it's going to require getting Republicans out to vote. And we saw that in the Winsome Earl Sears election. Republicans who came out and voted for President Trump did not come out to vote for the governor's race. And so we have to choose candidates on the conservative side that will appeal to those voters. And we've got to work hard to get that vote out and to get them to the ballot box. One thing that Democrats have done in our state is they've implemented the permanent absentee ballot.
Yes.
And Republicans don't like voting absentee.
Understandably.
Understandably. But we've got to play their game. We've got to get people who don't normally vote, we need to get them signed up to receive absentee ballots. We've got a special election coming up in Virginia in April regarding the gerrymandering topic. And a lot of people aren't going to even know that that election is taking place. The Democrats already have their people signed up to receive an absentee ballot for that election. Republicans don't.
Tell us very quickly, what is the gerrymandering case all about?
So the Virginia Democrats want to redistrict all of our House of Delegates seats that are up in November to go from being leaning 6 Democrat and 5 Republican leaning to 10 Democrat leaning and 1 Republican.
These are congressional seats.
These are congressional seats. And if that happens, it could change the control of the House of Representatives. And so this has national impact, not just Virginia.
But they're casting it as fair. 10-1?
Yeah, so the ballot language is very deceiving. There are some cases tied up in court right now over this. But the ballot language asks Virginians if they want the congressional districts to be fair. And going from 6 to 5 to 10 to 1 is not fair, especially when just a few years ago, Virginians had a referendum on the ballot where they chose to have a bipartisan redistricting commission control our elections.
Yes.
So now the Democrats, led by Senator Louise Lucas, is leading this charge because she hates President Trump so much that they want to just abolish what the Virginians voted for just a few years ago.
And the irony is this is exactly what's happening in many, many blue states. Colorado and California are great examples of this. I think New York is as well. The left led the charge for these independent citizen redistricting commissions, right? To depoliticize the whole process and take it out of the hands of the legislature. And now they're saying, well, it's not fair if this independent commission doesn't do it because we're your elected representatives. We need to do it. Right. They've completely reversed on the issue 100% because of politics. They know that. That's exactly what it is. But they're just lying to our faces about it, aren't they?
Yeah, and in some of these other states, these other blue states that did undertake the redistricting, they already had that ability in their laws that they could do that.
Texas is a good example of that.
Yeah, Texas was they could change the redistricting because they didn't have a referendum like we had in Virginia that specifically stated in our Constitution that it had to be a bipartisan commission.
Do you expect that to pass in April?
Unfortunately, I think it will. just because I don't think Republicans are going to come out to vote. They're not going to be aware of it. And I'm concerned about the ballot language. I do think that it will be tied up in the courts, but I don't know if the Supreme Court of Virginia is going to have the willingness to overturn a referendum of the voters.
So to wrap all this up, the votes are there. The issues are there for the most part, right? The will to actually turn out people in the right scale, in the right places, that requires professional machinery. It requires planning. It requires investment. We're not seeing that in Virginia like we need to see it. Is that fair?
That's very fair. And we need to get out the Christian vote as well. I've reported on this. We have a record number of Christians who are staying at home and not getting involved. So we've got to get our churches involved, and we've got to get the people out to vote, because I do believe, as you said, the votes are there.
Victoria Manning, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you, Hayden.
Thanks for tuning in to Restoration Spotlight. I'm your host, Hayden Ludwig. If you like what you hear and want to join the fight to protect the next generation of patriots, visit restoration-news.com, where we publish hard-hitting news, commentary, and investigative deep dives that put America first. That's restoration-news.com.